Your session objectives are to understand how to search and review existing literature, and to understand how to start to develop a literature review. When it comes to starting your literature search, you need to make sure you use reliable academic and industrial databases. This is because the quality of your literature review is only as good as the quality of the literature reviewed within it. As an enrolled university student, you will have access to reliable academic and industrial databases through the university library. At the start, it will also be useful to scan relevant journals and news to get a sense of what the contemporary issues are in your topic, and to ensure that your research is both contemporary and novel. You also need to identify key papers. These are the seminal works which are referred to most frequently in your topic. You need to make sure you build these into your literature review to ensure that you're building your work on the seminal theories and research in your area of study. Now, you should already have a research aim and research questions, so this should give you a defined topic, so you can then start to think about what the key words you need to search for in your literature search. Usually, the more precise the terms in your literature searching, the more effective the search. So it is often a good idea to draft a list of your search terms and go through them one by one to make sure you've got the full breadth of search for your topic. When it comes to reading and selecting research for your literature review, you need to ensure that you think about, why am I reading this research? And how does this work contribute to the debate in the subject field? And what is the significance of this research to your own topic? So how can you use and build on this work within your own research? It's also useful to think about what methodology and methods are used in the research you're reading, and then you can start to think about whether your research is using the same methods as similar research or different methods, and this can then highlight a possible gap in the methods you're using and how your research is contributing to existing research. And finally, consider how convincing the arguments made in the papers you're reading. All research has limitations, and if you find that the arguments put forward are not convincing due to limitations, you can highlight this as a gap which you might be contributing to with your research. When it comes to conducting your research, it is often very useful to make sure you keep a recording of what you have read. It can be very difficult to read lots of papers and then go into writing your literature review. One way in which you can record and log all the papers you've read is through developing a table, where you start off by listing the papers you've read and detailing what was the paper researching, what was its precise aim, what methods were used, what was the sample included within the paper, and what was the sample size, what were the findings, and what were the limitations within the research. If you draft information below these headings, you can then go back to this table and link the papers together and highlight which papers are most relevant to your research, and potentially highlight a gap whereby maybe a certain method hasn't been used, or a certain sample hasn't been researched, or there are existing limitations within the research, and therefore your research is contributing by possibly using a different method or a different sample, or covering existing limitations within the research. When it comes to drafting your literature review, there are normally 4 steps. The first is to read and evaluate the existing work, and this is where you might then decide to record it in a table such as we just discussed. And then you might want to select the existing work relevant to your research. Now, unfortunately, not everything you read will be of direct importance or relevance to your own research, so you might need to omit some of the research that you've read because you do not have space to cover absolutely everything you've read, but you need to include the most relevant research in your literature review. Once you've selected the existing work relevant to your research, you then need to think about how you're going to organise this work and how you're going to link it together, because you need to ensure that you develop a narrative guiding the reader through the arguments you're developing. So normally we start off talking at a more macro level and guide the reader through a narrative or story to explain how you've got to your own specific ideas. And then the 4th thing you need to do is explain how your work builds on existing research. So what concepts are you taking forward, and what are you doing which is different to the existing research? Now, a tip. After writing your literature review, if it makes no difference which order the paragraphs appear in, it is badly written. This is because there should be clear links and progression throughout your literature review, guiding the reader through a narrative or story that you're seeking to develop. This means if you can move a paragraph from near the bottom to the top or vice versa and it still makes sense, it means you haven't crafted your literature review to guide the reader through the arguments that you're presenting in a narrative. So, for conclusions, you need to ensure you search credible academic literature. If you're not using credible academic literature, no matter how well your literature review is written, it will not be credible. I'd also recommend you find a way to record the literature you read. This will save you a lot of time, and of course it's up to you how you might want to go about this. We discussed using a table, but other people find it useful to draw diagrams or mind maps linking the different research areas and themes together. And then finally, explain how your research builds on existing research. So what concepts are you building your work on? And what hasn't been done within the existing research? And then explain how your research will contribute to the existing body of knowledge.